His name was Thomas Hartley, and most people at the Riverside shooting range knew him only as the quiet old-timer who came every Thursday afternoon, always alone, always in that same red jacket over a plain white shirt. His white hair and beard were neatly trimmed, but his hands shook slightly when he signed the range log. At 72, he looked like someone's grandfather, not someone who should be handling high-powered rifles. The younger shooters rarely spoke to him beyond polite nods. They were too busy comparing their custom equipment and posting their scores online. Thomas never posted anything. He just shot his modest rounds, cleaned his borrowed rifle with meticulous care, and left as quietly as he'd arrived. That particular Thursday started like any other. Thomas arrived at 2 o'clock sharp, paid his range fee with exact change, and waited patiently for an open lane. The range was crowded. A regional qualifying event had brought out the area's best marksmen, including Derek Chen, a 26-year-old prodigy who'd been setting records at ranges across 3 states. Derek had brought an entourage, his coach, his girlfriend filming everything for social media, and 2 friends who seemed to exist solely to laugh at his jokes. They'd taken up 3 lanes and most of the attention. The range record Derek kept mentioning was legendary. 700 yards, 10 shots, a grouping so tight you could cover all the holes with a silver dollar. It had stood for 8 years, set by a Marine Corps sniper who'd gone on to win national championships. The rifle used was a standard issue M40, nothing fancy, just pure skill and perfect conditions. Derek had been trying to break it for months with his custom-built precision rifle that cost more than most people's cars. His best attempt had come close, but close didn't change the board. Thomas settled into lane 12, the furthest from the crowd. He'd requested the ranger's rental M40, the same model used for the record. The range officer, a bored college student named Marcus, brought it over with barely concealed annoyance. "This one's pretty beat up," Marcus said. "Most people want the newer models." Thomas ran his weathered hands along the stock, checking the action, with practiced movements that Marcus didn't notice. "This one's fine," Thomas said softly. Derek's voice carried across the range. "Watch this, everyone. This is how you earn a spot in the record books." His first shot cracked through the air. The electronic target system showed a hit just outside the bullseye. Good, but not record-breaking. His coach called out adjustments. Derek fired again, closer. His girlfriend zoomed in with her phone. The small crowd that had gathered murmured appreciation. Derek was good, no question about it. His grouping after 5 shots was impressive, professional level, but it wasn't going to break the record. Not today. Thomas loaded his magazine with the smooth efficiency of muscle memory that transcends decades. His hands weren't shaking anymore. They never did once he held a rifle properly. He adjusted the scope, made minute calculations that existed more in instinct than conscious thought, and settled into a shooting position that looked almost casual but was geometrically perfect. Marcus happened to glance over, and something about the old man's posture made him pause. There was a stillness there, a complete absence of wasted movement. The first shot surprised everyone in Thomas's vicinity. Not because it was loud, all the shots were loud, but because of what happened next. The electronic display showed a perfect bullseye hit at 700 yards, dead center. Marcus blinked at the screen, then at Thomas, then back at the screen. One of Derek's friends had noticed too. "Lucky shot," he muttered, but he kept watching. Thomas didn't react to the hit. His expression remained sad and serious, that permanent gravity that seemed carved into his features. He breathed, calculated, and fired again. The second shot struck so close to the first that the electronic system briefly glitched, unable to distinguish 2 separate holes. Marcus actually stood up from his chair. "Holy," he whispered. An older range member, a Vietnam vet named Carl who volunteered on Thursdays, moved closer to lane 12. His face had gone pale. By the 4th shot, Derek had stopped shooting. By the 6th, everyone on the range had stopped. The only sound was Thomas's breathing and the methodical crack of the M40. Each shot landed in a grouping so impossibly tight that experienced shooters were shaking their heads in disbelief. This wasn't just record-breaking. This was something else entirely. This was the kind of shooting that shouldn't be possible with aging eyes and a rental rifle and no warm-up. Derek walked over, his expensive rifle hanging forgotten in his hands. His smirk had vanished, replaced by confusion and something that might have been awe. "Who are you?" he asked. Thomas finished his 10th shot before answering. The final grouping measured less than 2 inches across at 700 yards. The old record was shattered. The new one would probably stand for decades. Just someone who used to do this for a living, Thomas said quietly, setting the rifle down with reverent care. Carl, the Vietnam vet, had pulled out his phone. His hands were shaking as he scrolled through something. "Thomas Hartley," Carl said, his voice cracking. "You're Thomas Hartley. Oh my God, you're the ghost of Fallujah." The name hung in the air like smoke. Derek's girlfriend stopped filming. Marcus dropped his clipboard. The ghost of Fallujah was a legend, a story told in military circles about a Marine sniper who'd saved an entire platoon during the Second Battle of Fallujah. Official records listed him with over 90 confirmed kills in a single week of urban combat, protecting wounded Marines during an impossible extraction. He'd been awarded the Navy Cross, the second highest military decoration. Then he'd disappeared from public life, refusing interviews, declining book deals, living quietly somewhere no one could find him. "I thought you were dead," Carl whispered. "The story said you died in Afghanistan in 2011. Thomas shook his head slowly. "I retired in 2011. Moved here to be near my daughter. She passed 3 years ago. Cancer. Now I just come here on Thursdays because it's quiet and I can remember when my hands were steady for reasons that mattered." Derek's face had drained of colour. "I called you Pops. I said, 'Oh God, I'm so sorry, sir.'" His voice broke on the last word. Thomas looked at him with those sad, serious eyes. "You didn't know. Most people don't. That's how I prefer it. I'm not that person anymore. I'm just an old man who likes to shoot." But Marcus had already called the range owner. Within 20 minutes, word had spread through the local veteran community like wildfire. Cars started pulling into the parking lot. Men in their 50s and 60s, some in motorcycle vests covered with military patches, some in business suits, all coming to see if the rumour was true. A retired colonel named Patterson arrived, and when he saw Thomas, he actually saluted, tears streaming down his weathered face. "You saved my son in Fallujah, Sergeant Hartley. He was one of those wounded Marines. He's a doctor now, has 3 kids, because of you." Thomas stood slowly, returning the salute with precision that decades couldn't erase. "I'm glad he made it, sir. I'm glad they all made it." His voice was still quiet, still sad, but there was something else there now. Recognition, connection, the weight of memory shared with people who understood. Derek approached again, this time with his expensive rifle extended. Could you show me? Not how to shoot like that, I know that's impossible, but just how to hold the rifle the way you do, how to find that stillness." Thomas looked at the young man for a long moment. The arrogance was gone, replaced by genuine humility and hunger to learn. "The stillness isn't in the rifle," Thomas said. "It's in knowing why you're shooting. Competition is fine, records are fine, but the steadiest hands I ever knew belonged to people who were shooting to protect something they loved more than themselves. Find what you're protecting, even if it's just the integrity of the craft, and your hands will steady." The range owner, a former Army Ranger named Phillips, came out of his office with a plaque. "We're retiring Lane 12, he announced to the growing crowd. "From now on it's the Thomas Hartley Memorial Lane, and that record he just set, that's permanent. We're not letting anyone try to break it. It stays as a reminder that the best among us often walk quietest." Thomas tried to protest, but Phillips cut him off. "You've been coming here for 3 years, paying your fees, never asking for anything. We should have known, we should have seen, but we're seeing now, and we're making sure everyone who comes after sees too." He mounted the plaque right there, brass gleaming under the range lights. "Thomas Hartley, USMC, Navy Cross recipient, the ghost of Fallujah, range record, unbeatable." The gathering turned into an impromptu ceremony. Veterans shared stories. Some had served with Thomas, others had only heard the legends. A young Marine, fresh from boot camp, asked if he could shake Thomas's hand. "You're in all our training materials," he said, voice full of awe. "They don't use your name, but we know the stories. The sniper who held a position for 42 hours straight. The one who called in his own position for artillery because it was the only way to stop the enemy advance and save the platoon." Thomas nodded slowly. "I did what needed doing, same as thousands of others. I'm not special." But Carl, the Vietnam vet, stepped forward. "That's where you're wrong, brother. You are special. Not because you can shoot, though Lord knows you can. You're special because you came back and you stayed humble. You let punk kids like Derek talk down to you and you never corrected them. You never threw your medals in anyone's face. You just kept being a good man, living a quiet life, honouring your daughter's memory. That's the real heroism, the kind that happens after the cameras leave. Thomas's eyes glistened, but he didn't let the tears fall. She was proud of me, he said quietly. My daughter, not for the shooting or the medals. She was proud because I volunteered at the VA hospital every Monday, helping younger vets with PTSD. She said that was my real mission. The shooting was just preparation for the real work of helping people carry their burdens home. Derek had been standing silently, his expensive rifle now seeming like a child's toy. Sir, he said, his voice steady now, would you let me buy you dinner? I want to hear about your daughter, and I want to apologise properly for being such an arrogant fool. Thomas studied him and finally nodded. Okay, but you're going to volunteer at the VA hospital with me next Monday. If you want to learn to shoot with purpose, you need to understand what some of us are shooting to forget, and what others are learning to live with. The crowd stayed for over an hour, but eventually people had to leave. Jobs, families, responsibilities pulled them back to their lives, but they left different. Marcus, the board range officer, asked Thomas if he could interview him for a school project about unsung heroes. Phillips, the range owner, announced he was starting a scholarship fund for children of fallen veterans in Thomas's name. Patterson, the colonel, promised to bring his son to meet the man who'd saved his life. As the sun set and the range finally emptied, Thomas sat alone in lane 12, looking at the plaque with his name. Carl sat down beside him. You okay, brother? Thomas nodded slowly. I miss her. My daughter. She used to say I was hiding out here, hiding from the world. Maybe she was right. But today felt like maybe I stopped hiding. Maybe I let people see me again. She'd be proud, Carl said. Not of the shooting, of the teaching, of the grace you show that kid Derek, of the way you're still serving, still protecting, just in different ways. Thomas smiled for the first time anyone could remember. It was small, sad around the edges, but genuine. Yeah, maybe she would be. The next Thursday, Thomas arrived at his usual time. But lane 12 had a line of people waiting. Young shooters who'd heard the story and wanted to learn from the ghost of Fallujah. Derek was first in line, and beside him stood a teenage girl with a rifle case. This is my sister, Derek said. She wants to learn to shoot for the right reasons. I told her you were the only one who could teach that. Thomas looked at them all, these young faces full of respect and hunger to learn. His hands didn't shake as he picked up the M40. His expression was still sad and serious, but there was light in his eyes now, purpose beyond memory. Okay, he said quietly. Let's talk about why we shoot. Let's talk about stillness. Let's talk about protecting what matters. And in lane 12, under a plaque that would outlast them all, an old veteran in a red jacket began teaching a new generation that the greatest marksmanship comes not from expensive equipment or youthful eyes, but from a steady heart that knows exactly what it's protecting. The record on the board would stand forever, but the real legacy was just beginning. Because true skill, real honour, and the quiet dignity of service never fade. They just wait patiently for the moment when the world is finally ready to see them again.